Episode 3919. Josh and Jason are back. Good to see you, Josh. We had a big show on your Sunday, my Monday. How you doing now?
Doing great. Fantastic. We got some stuff to talk about.
Certainly do. And for those of you that have been watching and trying to work out other ways to consume our show, we are now on Spotify, and all you need to do is search our names, Jason Olborn and Josh Bernstein, US and Aussie news, and you'll find the last edition. We've now titled that Episode 1. In the description comments, of course, it will give you the reference, which was 3916, so you'll know exactly where you're at, and we will continue there. So we now have an audio offering that's outside of the Substack web that pretty much anyone can get hold of, and I would think that most of the world's using Spotify these days, Josh.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe we'll go to Apple Music and Amazon and some of these others. We'll see if they'll allow us to do that.
Well, that's interesting too, and I'm glad that you said that, because a lot of people say, I don't want to use those products because of reputation, etc. But the point is that if we're able to change minds, we need to be on platforms where people who don't agree with us are. And I know that for the most part, Monday's show was quite well received, and it was a good mix of fact, a little bit of theory, and perhaps even a little bit of conspiracy, but trying to put it together in a way, and most of all, that achieves the outcome that you would expect that President Trump is going for. He's not trying to ruin the world, he's trying to improve the world, and with those with that focus, with that lens, that's kind of where we're at. So that's the purpose of what we're doing. Now, Josh, we'll mix up today's show and we'll go a little bit Australia, a little bit US. I'd let you start first. Open the innings for us. What are you seeing out of the US today that's the number one story?
Well, I think right now, certainly what's going to be happening possibly pretty soon with Iran, there's been a lot of reports that the Trump administration is, quote, 90% there. So don't know exactly what that means, but, you know, the death toll, the numbers are just astounding. I mean, we're talking over 3 million people injured. And it's funny because just yesterday, I think I saw on Fox News, they're now just reporting on the doctor that came out and said, and again, I covered this 2.5, 3 weeks ago, where they were shooting people in the hospitals that were survivors. The protesters. They just came out on Fox News 3 weeks later on that. So it goes to show you how up to the minute, up to the date, up to the second, the minute, the hour, or the week, whatever, that our shows are. And that's what the kind of content that we put out. But I would say right now, it could be in the next couple of weeks that I think he's going to do the State of the Union address and things like that. He may mention a little bit about Iran, but I think he's going to keep it on domestic policy for the most part. And I think after that, you could see some kinetic action going on in Iran.
Now, just an interesting fact that I have said before, but of all executions performed around the world, Iran performs 74% of the entire total. Just to give you an idea of the brutality of that regime. It's just truly extraordinary. And it doesn't matter male, female, adult, child. 13-year-old girls have been known to have been executed in that country. Go figure. Absolutely shocking. So it's quite interesting when people want to justify the existence of that regime, even when the Iranian people are screaming out for change. It doesn't quite make sense. And often it's the Palestinian supporter set that are doing it. So again, this nuance that seems to be missing. Josh, I want to cut back to Australia. There's two big stories that I want to cover. We'll do them probably separately. The first one is in relation to, it's always about economics, right? That's where we're always at. This is the headline this morning from the news.com.au, Murdoch rag. Peak Australia, National Australia Bank bosses devastating warning as real wages go backwards. Our living standards may never improve from today's levels, the head of the NAB has declared amid devastating new data. Now, what I'm going to do is, I don't normally do this, but I thought I'd just read a couple of paragraphs directly from the article because I want to get stats right on the two that I'm going to cover. Figures released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics this week showed nominal wages rose 3.4% in the year to December, but inflation ran hotter at 3.8% over the same period. That's the first annual decline in real wages since September of 23, intensifying the cost of living squeeze on households. The data comes as the Reserve Bank warns inflation could remain above its 2.5% target until 2028 unless interest rates stay higher for longer. So no cuts here in Australia. You guys are going down. Your inflation is off the charts. Brilliant, backwards. Ours is going up, and our interest rates went up accordingly last month. We got our notice in the mail last week that the interest rate will rise by the 0.25%. Some people getting a 0.34% increase on their home loans. There was a story today, Josh, again on the Today Show, and of course we do look, well, I certainly do look at mainstream news to see what the world is being fed. But the cost of living, they were saying that it's up about $2,250 per household here in Australia. That doesn't bode well for Anthony Albanese, who promised you $275 off your power bill that you never quite got. Well, it's now going up ninefold on that decrease. It's now increased. Half of that's dedicated to the first interest rate rise. There could well be 1, 2, 3, 4 or more of them, for goodness sake. And then, of course, it includes the cost of groceries, the cost of private health insurance increases, the cost of fuel, etc., and other expenses that we all suffer. So it's certainly making things a lot more difficult when you're just trying to make ends meet. And so if you're not getting a pay rise for the work that you're doing, you are absolutely going backwards. So that's what I wanted to cover first. We're going to go back to Australian news next, but you've got some more news out of the US. Where are we going?
I just wanted to cover what the new economic numbers have been here in America. We, for the first time since 1966, have had almost zero job growth in the public sector. That means that the private sector is flourishing. Wages have increased about $1,800 already from the high of $2,900 that your money basically was eaten up because of inflation under the Autopen years. So we've recouped about $1,800 of that $2,900 already in 1 year. And so we're seeing some of the most dynamic numbers that are coming. I believe President Trump is going to talk about that. But I bring that up as a contrast because in Australia, you're going the opposite direction. You're going to a direction of globalism and leftism and liberalism, and the Albanese government is clearly, doing this. I mean, it's almost like they took a blueprint from the Autopen administration, if you want to know the truth. So it goes to show you that when you elect the right leaders, you can change the trajectory of your country's wealth and prosperity in a very short order, and President Trump is living proof of that.
Well, not only that, but when you think about the commentators here in Australia coming back immediately last week after the interest rate rise, which basically means inflation. And the first thing they said is that this government cannot stop spending like drunken sailors. Will you stop spending? And that will take the heat out of inflation. To which Jim Chalmers, the treasurer, always deflects and he blames everyone else, etc. And what it says is that no matter what's happening in the greater broad economy, they want to further their agenda to kind of shore up their voting base. Because, to quote Paul Keating, probably the best of all the treasurers, regardless of what you think from the Labor Party, he said, always in politics you can bet on self-interest because at least you know it's trying. And there it is once again. But we're now at a point now that there is a juxtaposition. You cannot have interest rates, as they did go up 13 times under Albanese's watch, and then they fell once or twice to only go back up again. That is now directly responsible. That is the government. And then when you looked at that against the US, that's changed things. Interest rates will be going down after May when they get rid of Jerome Powell at the Fed. But inflation's already down. It's obviously provable. We're up $2,200 Australian in terms of living expenses, and you guys have got an $1,800 pay rise in US dollars. So you are flying compared to us. So net difference there is quite substantial. So that is a big deal that's happening over there. Now, Josh, well, we might as well continue then if we come back to with Australia here. This is a really interesting story. It's been coming for some time. Albanese introduced this new green sort of tax on cars. And I know that, again, News has been covering this for some time. You'll pay, cries the headline. Car prices up under Albo's tax. Serious financial pain is on the way for Aussie car owners, courtesy of one of Albanese's lesser-known but most controversial moves. So let me give you some information. Kia, which is now one of the big retailers of motor vehicles here in Australia, has cancelled the sales of its V6-powered petrol Carnival and Sorrento as they attract larger penalties than hybrid or diesel versions, and customers lose out as the V6 models were $5,000 cheaper than the hybrid, $2,000 less than the diesel. Now, Ford's Everest, which was once Car of the Year here in Australia, Wheels magazine, has jumped up $5,000 in price when the Blue Oval cancelled cheaper rear-wheel drive versions that didn't fit the government model, and Isuzu's MUX, which is another family SUV, increased by about $7,000. That is significant. Now, the government policy pushed Toyota to make showrooms much greener, but also contributed to the starting price of its cheapest car. Ready for this one? In 2020, the Toyota Yaris, I think it was $15,390. Today, $28,990.
Wow.
With the addition of a hybrid engine.
Crappy car.
Exactly, but nearly $30,000 for a little BuzzBox hybrid. Now, if Ford keeps the current model in showrooms until 2029, given that it's its car of the year, the Everest, biggest seller, the brand will pay about $22,000 in fines for every example sold. So they've got to pass that fine on. So that $7,000 increase by 2029 is going to be 22. So if you're paying already $75,000 for this car, it can't be cheaper than $97,000. These are Singapore prices, for goodness sake. Now, that's not the number passed on to consumers. Modelling by Pitcher Partners accounting firm suggests that penalties will be roughly doubled by the time they reach consumers as taxes, fees and margins. So you're talking $44,000 increase on an Everest in 5 years' time, and no guarantee people will be able to choose cars like the Ford Mustang GT that arrived here in 2015. First time ever it was directly here as a factory-made right-hand drive, which is a big deal. So that's been selling now. This is now its 11th year. Now, the car, when it first came out, Josh, for a bit of background, was about $60,000 Australian, which is pretty competitive. That same car now, the Mustang GT, the V8, sells for $85,990 plus on-road costs. And the journalist is asking, are we ready for a $150,000 Mustang in Australia? Well, of course we're not. It's not possible that would be the case. So can Ford keep the Mustang business alive if only a handful of people can afford one? Now, here's where we're going. In the Netherlands,
Living
where
in your
emissions...
cars is where you're going.
Well, exactly. Now, emissions in the Netherlands, taxes are already in place. A Mustang in the Netherlands is 221,000 Australian dollars. So that's where they're headed. They're just simply going to destroy it, all because they believe it. Now, what's interesting is that the Trump administration only a week ago has completely destroyed the whole tailpipe emissions. They've got rid of it. Your cars are going down. So a Ford Mustang in the United States will actually go down in price while ours will double in price. This is extraordinary, Josh.
It is. It certainly is. And, look, we're not without fault here in the United States of America. When they did the falsely named Inflation Reduction Act, which did the opposite and actually increased inflation, there was a little caveat that was stuck in that bill, and it was really kind of like a test program for what's called the VMT, the Vehicle Motor Tax. And this was set up to do San Diego, California, and I think Portland, Oregon. And these two cities were the test cities of this, where they were going to charge you every single time you drove by the mile, okay? Now, this was originated in California, and now some of these liberal left-leaning states are wanting to try to do this. Now, what I have heard here in Arizona is they are trying to put on the ballot this VMT. So imagine that you get charged every single time you drive the car. So we are aware of that here in Arizona. We will be doing everything we can to put a ballot measure up that actually fights against it. And if we pass it, it can't be implemented here. So that's our fight here, and that's what we will do. But it goes to show you that this administration is fighting against all this green energy garbage, but yet you still have these blue states in America still pushing this garbage green stuff and wanting to not just control your driving patterns and habits, but they want to charge you every single time you get in your car. This is the communist way of working, and we've got to stop it here in the United States of America. And so even Ford, you mentioned Ford before, Ford has admitted that they have lost billions and billions and billions of dollars on their electric garbage cars, basically, and things like that. So we're moving away from that, and it seems like some of the people in the world are moving towards it. And I just feel for all of you, because you have a government that is run by globalists that obey the Chinese and the CCP, and that's a big problem. And we were like that. We were like that for 4 years. Not anymore.
Well, what the other disturbing or interesting development within that, when I say disturbing, it's because of what's going to come with it, is that the car manufacturers are now saying what we're going to do as a result of this is press ahead with our certified used car programs. Now, that makes sense, but a new car manufacturer that then says it's actually better for us to just look after the ones that we've already sold to you, dress them up, run full big service programs, and then sell them at an inflated price because we've got to put certification on them to say that they meet a certain standard. So that's where we're going. What does it mean? It means for those that can afford to have purchased a new car, perhaps 24, 25, early 26, the values of those cars will slowly decrease as opposed to rapidly increase. However, that's what it looks like on the surface. Being somebody who's owned almost 50 cars in his lifetime, just a car enthusiast, that's not quite how it works. What will actually happen is that the new car manufacturers running certified programs will create a larger margin between what they trade your car in and what they sell for. So currently, just to give people a background, generally about $5,000 is a gap already that's already imposed by a major car dealer before they add in everything else. So if they buy your used car that you paid $60,000 for and they give you $20,000 for it in a trade-in, they're probably looking to get $31,990 onto that car. There's a $5,000 loading, and then there's the profit in there that the salesman, he doesn't make any profit on his commission of the $31,990 list price down to about $25,000, and he might get 10% of that. If he can sell it for 31, he probably sells it for 28, and he makes 10% of the $3,000 profit. He makes $300 commission. That's all he makes. But the car dealer's got the $5,000 loading in there as well. So it's quite complicated, and that's why there's such a big gap. And of course, what it does mean is that the self-serve model of going to a website in Australia, it's Car Sales is our leading used car website. You've got many of them in the US there as well. But it just means that you then go and sell it yourself and do your own work, and you have to still sell it below what a dealer might sell it for because you don't have a warranty and all that stuff. But you get more than the trade of the $20,000. You might still be able to get $24,000 or $26,000 for that particular car. So it's complicated, but it almost looks like we're turning into Cuba, Josh, because now we're going to have to get into the used car business.
Gosh, I hope not. It kind of reminds me, before getting into broadcasting, I was in the car business. I ran car dealerships for many, many years, about 13 years. And I remember the time when Barack Obama did that Cash for Clunkers program way back when. And what he was basically doing is trying to take older cars off the roads because, again, with the Green New Deal and scam and all that, they figured that those cars emitted, more CO2 or whatever it was, right? But in reality, the electric cars are worse for the environment because of the batteries lasting 150 years or whatever, right? So that's really the problem. But I digress. And so I was a manager at the time, and I remember taking cars in on trade and realizing that a car the month before that was worth $5,000 used was now all of a sudden only worth $2,000, $2,500, was worth half its value in 1 month because of this stupid program. Yep. So I got smart. And what I did is I took those cars and I put them into front-loaded deals. So in other words, I would advertise, buy a Chevy, get a Buick for $1. Buy a Ford, get a Nissan for $1. And what I would do is I would jack up the price on the new car considerably, and then I would fit the old car, the junker, whatever, into the deal. So you'd get 2 cars for one. So maybe you need a new car, but your daughter or your son is graduating high school and they need their first car. You can buy a clunker. So I would take these older cars that were killing me at the auction because I was getting murdered at the auction, and I was retailing them with the front end deal. So the minute they tried to negotiate the price of the car, I would pull the second car out. And you'd be surprised how many people bought those junker cars for more money than what they were getting at the sale because they got 2 cars for one. And I ended up saving the dealership about $130,000 and saving my paycheck as well as all my salespeople's paycheck. So yeah, the Cash for Clunker situation was an absolute disaster. And it sounds like the Cash for Clunker thing is still going on, sadly, but now it's just dressed up in environmental garbage.
And look, it is really, really difficult, and of course, the amount of money that's lost in the depreciation of cars, one wonders how it works.
Yeah. Any new car you buy, as soon as you title that car, you could drive it around the corner and park it back on the lot. You've lost 28% on average. Some cars lose 32, 33%. Some only lose 21, 22%, depending on the type of car. Obviously, a Toyota, Honda, things like that, Lexus. Those are cars that usually hold their value more. That's why it doesn't make sense, I'm getting into a whole tangent here, to ever purchase a vehicle. You always want to lease a vehicle, always, because why eat the depreciation? Why not use it for the best part of the car's life, and then when it's done, get a new car, right? It makes more sense, because why anyone would lease a car for 2 or 3 years and then buy out the remainder of that vehicle where you've already eaten the 28%. And when you lease a car, you don't eat the 28%, the bank does. So I could go into a whole nother thing on that of why leasing is the best way to buy a car, but we'd be here all hours of the night.
Unreal. All I know is if you'd bought a Ford Mustang in 2015, you're probably in front, and you're probably loving the purchase that you have done. So there's the double irony. The big guzzlers are actually going up in value, which is kind of the opposite. So it's going to keep more on the road, create a bigger marketplace for those types of cars going forward in the future. Very, very interesting. Now, Josh, we're going to go and cover again election fraud. Have a look at this. This is from the Gateway Pundit. Muckraker goes undercover in New York City. The Board of Elections worker caught on hidden camera admitting non-citizens register to vote. We accept anything that comes over the counter, and it's not my job to report anyone. Well, there you have it. You can't get a bigger admission than there. People who are ineligible
Sounds like the
to
Nuremberg
vote.
trials. I was just doing my job.
Yeah, that's just amazing. Look, that headline is self-explanatory, but it is telling us that there is no way in the world that the election system is the safest that we were told that it was. And we can certainly recall when Trump said things like of 2020 election, he doesn't give up on it. He's also said that he's got Obama cold for Russiagate, and it only seems to be a matter of time before the world is ready for such a headline. And I wonder, as Clandestine did as well, that we're going to have to get all the way to the midterms. Trump wins them handsomely, and then people will realise that even though the polls said that he was going to be slaughtered, and if he does win, and certainly in a landslide, then the people will start scratching their head and go, well, who really did the cheating? Was it the Democrats in the past, or was it Trump in the future? They'll argue the toss on this whole thing about voter suppression, but the reality is people have gotten away with things that they shouldn't, and now the real people are voting, and then it's a different story. Then they'll be more willing to accept that 2020 was tampered with.
Yeah, without a doubt it was, obviously. I mean, I talked about it ad nauseum with my audience. I mean, I covered every single little bit of election fraud that we found even back then, fake curves, everything from the fake pipe breaking to the suitcases underneath. I mean, I used the suitcases underneath in an old opening to the show, I think in 2022 or 2021, I can't remember. But the bottom line is, we just now have heard that there was a drive-by shooting in Charlotte, North Carolina, of a Republican council member that's running for office. So the left doesn't want you to even run anymore. They want you dead. They shot 7 to 10 times. Thankfully, no one was injured. But you know what? This is a perfect reason and example for President Trump to say, we are putting ICE agents, and things like that in every single polling station, in every single swing state, no matter what. And we don't care what you say. We're going to make sure that we have free and fair elections that do not have violence. We remember with Barack Obama and the goons that he brought in, he had these Black Panther Party people that were armed at the polling stations, intimidating white voters in Pennsylvania and things like that. So we're not planning on doing that, but we want to make sure that there is no shenanigans. And I'm telling you right now that we have the votes for the SAVE Act, that has to be the number one priority. Number one priority. We've got to get that in law, pass that, because if we don't, we won't have a shot in the midterms. It doesn't matter how good the economy goes, because they'll be able to steal it and be able to cheat. And we have to stop that from happening, and that's what the SAVE Act does. And after we pass the SAVE Act, we need to eliminate the writing votes for Democrat liberal women. How's that?
Now, there's two more stories I want to cover. One of them is on the CDC, and the last one will be on the Trump family themselves. But we've just learnt today that Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, the co-author of the Great Barrington Declaration, or they've written as the project, is to become the acting CDC Director. Now, apart from 2 months in July, August of last year, there hasn't really been a permanent CDC Director since Rochelle Walensky in 2023 left, and we know how bad she was. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is the polar opposite of Rochelle Walensky, and given that he was taking on the whole COVID narrative and, of course, was highly critical of both the solution and the virus itself, which we now know to be man-made, this is a big change. Given that we talked about on our Sunday Monday show about Epstein and 9/11 and that huge narrative opening up again, this is massive, Josh. Jay Bhattacharya, acting CDC Director.
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful move. Remember, anyone can be appointed at any time to any position based on the 1998 rule that passed Congress that allows for temporary appointments of cabinet members, 210 days or 7 months. So you could do that for any position, and including this one. So he'll be on for at least 7 months. I'm sure there's a lot that he could do in that 7-month period. Maybe he will be confirmed at some point, Senate confirmation. But at this point, it doesn't matter, because after him, you could put somebody close to RFK Jr. I mean, there's a whole bunch. You could put Robert Malone in that position. It doesn't matter who you put in it. Dr. Pierre Corey, anyone can do that position in a rotating fashion and just keep the work going of what they're doing now and next. So I think it's great, and I think that the Health and Human Services has certainly become a strength of this administration.
Well, just to sort of tie it up before we move to the last story, if you consider that Trump brought in people that are enemies of the Democrats to serve and enemies of the globalist narrative. So he brings RFK Jr. in, like the number one enemy to the Democrats on health, because he took on Fauci better than Rand Paul ever could. And we don't know who Rand Paul really aligns with anymore anyway. He then brings in Tulsi Gabbard from the Democrats, who knew all about what happened with Seth Rich and what happened with the Democrat National Committee, etc., in relation to 2016 and Bernie Sanders, to become the head of intelligence for the country. Now, if he then brings in people like Howard Lutnick, is he bringing him in to turn the tables, or is he bringing Howard Lutnick in because he knows what Howard Lutnick knows and Howard Lutnick suffered? Now, I've noticed that we talked about that, and there's a lot of people that all go down the same two-dimensional pathway. Oh, he's Jewish, therefore he's a Zionist, therefore he's in on it, therefore he killed his brother, and therefore that's what Jewish people do. Disgusting. And I'll say it again, it's absolutely feral. And if you think like that, as they say in radio world, give yourself an uppercut. The man lost his brother and 658 staff. Now, he didn't lose all his staff. 300 people survived, as did he. So it wasn't like just he knew about it, for goodness sake. But at the same time, hundreds of Jewish people died on that particular day as well. And it's very, very upsetting that people would want to think like that and think the worst. But I'll tell you what, the one thing that we don't know about Trump is that he always manages to turn things around. And twist them in ways that you never saw, just like the Elon Musk story, where they had the big fake fight, if you will, and Musk goes, Trump's in the files. And of course, that got every Democrat in the world calling for the Epstein files, only to realise that they'd been played once again. And what happens? Musk and Trump become friends again, and there it is.
There it is.
Josh, very quickly,
that's not conspiracy either. That's for real.
That's for real. Very quickly, your comments on the Board of Peace developments, and then the last story on the Trump family.
Yeah, the Board of Peace is kicking butt and taking names. I mean, it's there to replace the United Nations. Let's just be point blank on its focus, okay? The United Nations has done absolutely nothing. It's a horrific anti-American organization. They didn't stop the Ukraine war. They didn't stop the 8 or 9 wars that President Trump easily stopped within a few phone calls. They have done nothing but molested children in foreign countries. They are a disgusting, depraved, and sick organization that should be smashed into 1,000 pieces and put to the ash heap of history. And I believe that's what the Board of Peace is working on. $5 billion from each member state that is going to be a part of this board have been contributed to this. Thousands of different peacekeepers and workers and things like that. And these are going to be folks that I would hope are going to have oversight from our administration and other countries that actually do have human rights records that are, a good human record and things like that. And they're going to be the ones that are overseeing this. A lot of this is going to be the rebuilding of Gaza and rebuilding of the area there in the West Bank and things like that. But it also is going to make sure that these people are not going to continue the old habits of funding and mechanisms and things like that through Hamas and Hezbollah, Boko Haram, Islamic Jihad, Mujahideen, all of these different groups, which of course are all funded by the great Satan, let's call it what it truly is, and that is Iran and that regime. So that's why everything kind of works together once we wipe out the Ayatollah and take over Iran and put somebody in there that's going to help liberate those people and also turn them not necessarily into an adversary, maybe not a strong ally, but at least somebody that we can work with in the geopolitical realm of things and make sure that we're not funding all of these horrific terrorist organizations and groups. So we'll see what happens. The Board of Peace is new, and it's a new way of doing things. And like I said, I think it's there to replace the United Nations. And how do you know that? Because we owed a certain amount of money to the United Nations, and now we have zero debts to the United Nations. Why? Because we're paying it up so we can close it down, in my opinion.
It does certainly appear that way, that he's walking away from it completely and realising how ineffective it was. And there are other countries that aren't paying their bills either with the UN. And it's always been a little bit like that, which is what Ted Turner originally threw the $1 billion at them to keep it going. But you do know that it serves its own globalist ends. I think the perfect result for Iran is that their own people were demanding regime change. So as little influence as possible in the US, with the US to do that, will make a much bigger, a better outcome. But we'll obviously watch, wait and see. What or who in the Trump family is looking at running for public office, Josh?
I think a lot of them are. Lara Trump just did an interview with, I think her name is Miranda Devine of the New York Post. She has a show.
That's right.
And it was interesting because she described when they stole the election from Trump and the family. And they said that they got on to the plane to head back to Palm Beach, Florida, and they were all somber. Everyone was sad, and they didn't really talk much. They flew. They got back to Mar-a-Lago, and President Trump said, "I want to have dinner as a family right now, right away." And they said, "Okay, sure, no problem." And they all got changed, got ready, and they met, in the dining area, whatever, to have dinner. And before they even sat down, President Trump said, he looked at his entire family, and he put his hand on the table, and he went, "Well, this means I got to do it all over again." And that's what he said. After all the torture that they put him through and the Russia hoax and all the other things that he had to go through, he came back and he said, "We're going to do this all over again." That's the measure of the man. That's someone that never quits. Lara Trump said that the timing wasn't right for her to join the Senate, but she feels as though she's going to, at some point, run for office. She said that Eric has aspirations to possibly run, maybe even Don Jr. So she basically kind of goaded them along and said, this is not what the liberals want to hear, but the Trump family is going to be involved in politics for the foreseeable future in many different ways and capacities. So we'll see what happens. Look, hey, maybe you have J.D. Vance president, you have Marco Rubio as vice president, and then, I don't know, maybe Pete Hegseth is your Secretary of State, or Tulsi Gabbard is your Secretary of State, and maybe you have Don Jr. in the cabinet, and maybe after their terms, Don Jr., Eric runs, and maybe Lara, it runs. I mean, the Trump family has been involved in the political realm now for many decades, and they're not going away just because President Trump, after his term, is term limited. That doesn't mean that that's not going to be the last Trump that you're going to see in politics. Now, whether they ascend to the highest level and, like the presidency as Donald did, that I don't know, but I can assure you that family is going to be political royalty for generations to come.
Well, you left out one Trump that I think is
Barron?
the certainty. I think Barron's going to be the president of the United States one day.
Barron is an interesting character. He's very quiet. He's very reserved. Some people even said that he's either Asperger's or autistic. I don't know if that's the case. I'm not saying he is or he isn't, but he's like 6'9", 6'10". He certainly has the stature to be president. He's an intimidating figure from that standpoint. But from what I understand, he's focused solely on business and finance at this point. But who knows? You never know. That could be, many years from now. But I think you'd be more likely to see a Lara, an Eric, a Don Jr. I think those would be more of the ones that you'd see immediate in the next 4 to 8 years, let's say, in office.
I had conversations with 3 separate people on 3 separate occasions about it became sort of biblical. I said, knowing everything that you know and what's going on and you're following it on like me, who is the one person on planet Earth that you would consider that could actually be the Messiah who was born already? And all 3 of them, without flinching, they all said Barron Trump. How about that?
Interesting.
So there you go. People do have different opinions about things. Of course, that's all fairy tale at the same time. But I just love the fact that they all had the exact same moment. They see something in that kid that others may or may not see. And at the same time, the big story coming out, completely separate, not planned for, Mel Gibson's 2-part on the resurrection of the Christ is starting to gather momentum, which is going to be absolutely massive. What's interesting, Josh, is that the first part is all about leading up to the resurrection, the 3 days, and then the second part is the ascension 40 days later. So I don't know so it kind of means at the end of the film is going to be you're going to see the resurrection, which was you only get a glimpse of it, and then it'll be before he ascends, so you miss the whole exciting bit of the middle about what he actually did. But the fact is, it'll probably be the biggest 2 films, I think, of all time when they do eventually get released in 27 and possibly 28, simply because of the interest in something like that. And the story is that he is using the Ethiopian Bible to be able to create this. And he's also using Cardinal, what's his name, the one that was excommunicated from the Vatican, Vinali, I can't remember his name, but anyway, this particular character that was excommunicated because of his stance on COVID, etc. He's the advisor on the film, which is just incredible.
Vigano, I think.
That's the guy.
Name?
Yeah. So it just means that
great guy.
It just means that this thing is going to be fabulous to watch either way.
Yeah. Also, Mel Gibson said that he was thinking about possibly running for governor in California too. So who knows? Not like it unprecedented. Ronald Reagan before, of course, and of course Clint Eastwood ran for mayor of Carmel. Arnold Schwarzenegger was a former governor of California, so he wouldn't be the first. Wouldn't that be something? What a turn for the books that might well be. Well, Josh, that has been Fast and Furious. You can check us out on Spotify. You can subscribe on Substack, jbushow.substack.com. My Substack, you find it via channel51.com.au or qcitizen.net. And you can check us out on X and YouTube and Facebook if you can find us. But please share, comment, etc. And I hope you enjoyed this Fast and Furious format for our Wednesday/Thursday. See you all next time. Thanks for watching and listening. See you, Josh. God bless.